بعد ما تابعنا التقرير نرحب بضيفنا باريس غورتسيانس وهو محرر شؤون ويستمنستر في الاسكتلندي الصحيفة القومية لاسكتلندا. Welcome Paris Gourtsoyannis, the Westminster correspondent of Scotsman, the national newspaper of Scotland. اسكتلندا أصبحت أمة مرة أخرى بالحصول على الاستقلال الداخلي، الحكم الذاتي، لكنها صوت شعبها برفض الاستقلال التام عن المملكة المتحدة. رئيسة الوزراء نيكولا ستيرجن وعدت بتقديم مشروع لبرلمان اسكتلندا. ما مدى فرصها في أن يصبح هذا قانون؟ The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, as she promised, actually presented this bill to Holy Road. Is it actually, first of all, you have to explain to our viewers, because they're not familiar with how Holy Road works. Is it actually going to become a bill? Is it like our green paper or our white paper?
So it's at the stage where there's going to be a consultation on the draft bill for a second referendum on Scottish independence. So there's going to be a 7-week process whereby members of the public and organisations can respond to the draft bill. I should say that the bill is it proposes a referendum on very similar, if not the same terms as in 2014. The crucial question, of course, is will the UK government allow the Scottish Parliament to pass this bill, because the permission to hold a referendum has to be granted by the UK government. It was in 2014. We don't know yet whether Theresa May will grant that permission again.
السؤال هنا، هل هذه مرحلة الاستشارة الشعبية قد تتحول بعد ذلك إلى مشروع قرار أم لا؟ First, so it is like a white paper, and then in this case, will this process of consultation would then, it's just like a thermometer with sort of the Scottish MPs will then say, okay, it might succeed, might not succeed, or is it really a process that is actually turning into a bill?
So Nicola Sturgeon doesn't have a majority in the Scottish Parliament, which was the case.
طبعا باريس بيشرح لنا ان الحزب الحاكم في اسكتلندا ليس لديه أغلبية مطلقة. Just explaining what you said to the viewer.
But with the support of the Green Party in Scotland, there would be enough votes to pass the bill and secure a second referendum on Scottish independence. The issue is, of course, is whether the people will support the idea of having a second referendum. Scotland voted to remain in the European Union. That's the issue that has triggered all of this, is the fact that Scotland voted strongly to stay in the European Union, whereas the rest of the UK, other than Northern Ireland, voted for Brexit.
طيب ما هي فرص النجاح؟ لأن كما تعلم أن حزب الخضر أيضا كان يريد البقاء في المملكة، ببقاء في الاتحاد الأوروبي. Would there be actually a chance that the Greens get together? Because the Green overall policy is to stay within the European Union.
That's absolutely right. And they also campaigned for independence in the previous referendum as well. Actually, just before coming to speak to you, I saw that the leader of the Green Party in Scotland had said that the only way to protect Scotland's status in the EU may well be to hold a second independence referendum. It sounds like they're leaning very strongly towards supporting the passage of this bill and holding a second referendum.
هنا بنقف عند نقطة مهمة، الوضع الاقتصادي، أسعار البترول، الانتخابات الثانية اللي قللت مقاعد نيكولا ستيرجن في البرلمان، هل بتأتيهم نفس هذه الزخم والقوة؟ If we see the current economic situation in Scotland, giving the oil prices, North Sea oil prices, giving the reduced majority, reduced number of seats Nicola Sturgeon got, do they really have that strong position as they did a few years ago?
At the last Scottish election, the SNP stood on a manifesto of calling a second referendum if there was what was called a material change in the circumstances of Scotland. And listed as one possible material change was Scotland being taken out of the EU. So she does, in that sense, have a mandate. But Nicola Sturgeon is not a gambler the way that Alex Salmond was. And she will only call this referendum, she will only proceed with this process if she thinks, if she knows that she can win it. Right now, support for independence remains at around 45%, where it was at the 2014 referendum. She faces a strong battle to shift that last few percent. And I know that the SNP are hoping that the Brexit deal that Theresa May negotiates is a hard Brexit with tough terms for the UK, and that will encourage people who are unsettled by that uncertainty to vote for independence. You mentioned the oil price. It's true. It's much lower now than what it was before the 2014 referendum. There isn't really an answer. Scotland has a significant deficit, much larger than the rest of the UK. If the campaign is fought on an economic prospectus, it will be difficult to convince people. I get the sense from speaking to MPs and other elected members of the SNP that instead that they're going to try and look for a more values-based decision that contrasts the willingness of Scotland to welcome immigrants with the change in rhetoric under Theresa May's government.
باريس غورتسيانيس محرر شؤون البرلمان في اسكتلندا. عودة لضيف باريس غورتسيانيس محرر شؤون ويستمنستر للحزب الاسكتلندي. Welcome back, Paris. First of all, quick question on. Okay, right. Sorry. That's why I said you have to do it when. Okay, and then pause because you're cutting my thoughts. Okay. نرحب مرة أخرى بالضيف باريس غورتسيانيس محرر الاسكتلندي في ويست مينستر. السؤال هنا عن أداء السيدة ماي في البرلمان. احنا دلوقتي بقى لها 100 يوم. هل أداءها على نفس مستوى كاميرون ولا لسه متنرفزة؟ Welcome back, Paris. We've just been talking about the Prime Minister lost PMQs. What do you think of her performance? It's approaching her 100 days. I mean, is she cannot deliver? I mean, I personally watch and I see if she sticks to being serious, she can do okay with the occasional pun, but she doesn't know how to deliver her lines.
She's not a natural humorist, no. Certainly not the way that David Cameron was. I think the reality is that she can get away with it because across the aisle, Jeremy Corbyn simply isn't providing any opposition. And in fact, the leader of the SNP is considered to be the best performer facing Theresa May. Even he had a hard time this week, though, when she slapped him down for asking troublesome questions about Brexit.
يعني هنا الأمر يعود إلى أن زعيم المعارضة دمه تقيل. وطبعا السؤال الثاني اللي بنسأله هنا سؤال يتعلق بالإكوادور وحرية الرأي. فجأة بنلاقي الصحافة الليبرالية اللي زي BBC وزي الجاردن اللي كانوا مع جوليان أسانج تحولوا ضده. ما فيش الصرخة الكبيرة دي بعد قطع الإنترنت. So it's actually to do that's really having an easy ride with Corbyn, who should really be sort of wiping the floor with her. Anyway, we'll go to a different subject now, because this whole story, a few years ago, when WikiLeaks, who was the hero of the liberal media like the BBC and the Guardian, the Independent, now he is actually painted as the villain, because WikiLeaks is supposed to be sort of doing all these leaks about Hillary Clinton. And now the internet is being cut. Ecuador, in fact, the Daily Mail and the Times found out that it was pressure from America that led to cutting. Why isn't actually the liberal media is screaming their head off because of freedom of speech? Internet's being cut.
They've disowned him largely because WikiLeaks was seen as this new era in transparency and holding elites to account. The difficulty is it's now inserted itself into the U.S. presidential race and is seen to be very close to Russia and to the Trump campaign, certainly putting material out there that embarrasses Clinton and helps Trump. And that's a very awkward place for the liberal media to be.
يعني هنا واضح ان اولا طبعا القاعده الاساسيه في الصحافه ان لما تضيق نفسك في حته صغيره بتفقد متفرجين او جمهور كبير. طبعا النقطه الثانيه ان المؤسسه الليبراليه الاوروبيه اكثر ميلا للديمقراطيين. What I'm saying is the old-fashioned school that once you become a niche market, you lose larger audience. But the issue here is the whole liberal establishment worldwide actually is subconsciously in preference or siding with the Democrats.
You could argue that. I think that equally we've seen across Europe and in the United States, pretty much everywhere in Western democracy, except perhaps in Canada, where Justin Trudeau was swept to power, a rise of very challenging populist rhetoric, and that there is obviously some discomfort at that, and it poses questions that I don't think there are easy answers to.
Speaking actually of freedom, بالمناسبة الحديث عن حرية الرأي والتعبير، كان في مشكلة هنا حصلت بين القناة الرابعة وبين فاطمة مانجي اللي هي مقدمة برامج مسلمة في القناة الرابعة، وبين كاتب كان رئيس تحرير سابق في صحيفة الصن، كان هو بينتقد رئيس تحرير النشرة إنه يوم اعتداء واحد مسلمي متطرف في نيس ومات ناس، ان هو طلع واحده لابسه حجاب، والحجاب مرتبط في اذهان الناس بايديولوجيه زي بتاعه داعش الناس دي. هم رفعوا قضيه عليه في مجلس الصحافه، مجلس الصحافه قال لا هم غلطانين، الراجل اللي عنده اسلاموفوبيا ولا كلام منا دي حريه راي. I just explained to the audience the background of the Channel 4 and the presenter with Kelvin MacKenzie. Isn't she a little bit sort of thin-skinned and really taking it too politically? Because we are public figures, you know. We should. We actually live in glass houses. Once we are criticized, we shouldn't really sort of hold each other by the same measures that when we attack someone else over privacy. What do you think of this?
I think at the heart of that issue is the fact that there was a question over whether she could be doing her job because of her personal choices about how she chose to reflect her religion. And that was the heart of the complaint.
بس هو كانت القضية هو ما انتقدهاش هو شخصيا، هو ما ذكرهاش، وده اللي خلى المجلس يحكم في صالحها. هو انتقد قرار المحرر النشرة نفسه. But you see, the point that actually made IPSA rule in his favor and reject her claim, he didn't criticize her, he didn't criticize her appearance or her as a person. He was actually criticizing the editorial decision itself as a journalistic decision, and she took it personally. So she actually put something professional to personal. And that's why, anyway, I mean, because we both journalists, I mean, are we sometimes hypocrites as journalists, that we criticize the others and we personalize things?
I am quite familiar with being criticised by the very MPs who then turn around, and particularly now on social media, are very willing to criticise the journalists that cover them. As I said, I think the principle that regardless of your religion, you should be able to, as long as you're competent and have integrity, perform any public role is what's at the heart of this question. But yes, journalists increasingly should be willing to take the criticism that they dish out.
نشكر باريس غورتسيانس محرر الشؤون البرلمانية في الاسكتلندي. Thank you very much, Paris, for coming, and see you again. Thank you very much.